Hey gang, Jake here. Don't you hate it when you get in a scrap with the guy at the mall and you have to fight in an unending white void? I know I do, which is why I'm so happy that fighting game stages exist. These funky little locales keep me from confronting my own infinite smallness in the universe whenever my boys and I need to decide who gets the last Go-Gurt. And I think that's pretty nifty. When it comes to crossover fighting games, stages are rarely the main focus. That's not bad, but it does mean that most games just have average stages. However, Fraymakers has the potential to circumvent this. What with having a wide breadth of indie games to pull from, hypothetically, there's tons that you could do to make some fantastic stages. That'd be a great video concept. Someone should try that. My first pick is pretty obvious. Let's talk about Mount Celeste from Celeste. This is my personal pick for the best way to represent this lovely little game, as it covers the difficulty half of Celeste's appeal without making Madeline an assist or a fighter. I'd set it in one of the caves of the game, with platforms dotting the inside and a medium-sized hole in the bottom for knocking opponents out of. Of course, this might make earning kills very difficult, so the hazards variant would have spikes in certain spots on the walls that function like Smash's danger zones. As for the music, Reach for the Summit carries the intensity of a Fraymakers match perfectly, and I feel like it would transfer over neatly to each of the game's soundtracks. Now, let's talk about a stage that's just a little closer to the ground. Little Insmith from Skullgirls would look fantastic in a Fraymakers style. I'd have this stage be a bit more open, with awnings acting as platforms on either side and the middle of the stage. However, that's not the only gimmick this stage could have, since Skullgirls is a traditional 2D fighter, similar to games like Fatal Fury. Borrowing the Blast Zone mechanic from KOF Stadium could be amazing. Still borrowing from that stage, seeing the characters from Skullgirls make cameos in the background could be sick. If I had my pick of the litter, I'd say Misfortune, Painwheel, Beowulf, and Annie. But those are just my picks. Pretty much anyone could suffice. As for music, my personal pick would have to be Them's Fightin' Words. This song's super high energy, and I feel like it does a great job conveying the mood of Skullgirls.
Hot dog!
Now, to get super basic, let's talk about Fall Guys. While this game kinda died immediately following Among Us' mobile release, and the current marketing is less than stellar, the game's still a significant piece of indie history, and I want to see it represented. For this concept, we're going to use Fall Mountain, one of the game's final events. The battle will be set on this open area right before the crown. It's pretty basic, with no platforms or danger zones, but when hazards are on, it gets hectic. You see, occasionally a fall guy will run through the battlefield trying to grab for the crown. Luckily for you, you can actually smack these things, and they'll go flying across the stage, depending on how hard you hit them. This may seem like just a neat little stage decoration, but you can actually hit your opponents with them, dealing a fair bit of damage. In addition, the stage is constantly sending boulders down the course, and getting hit with those can also hurt like hell. As for the music, there's really not much you can do to top the game's main theme. Everybody falls. Now, when it comes to indie games, unique styles are a massive part of the charm. So for the next stage, despite being pretty basic, I want a pick that ramps up the uniqueness to 11. A stage from Gunman Clive would look beautiful. For this example, I'd want it set during the first stage in the second game. Fighting amongst the wreckage and flames coating this western town, all while admiring the beautiful purple and orange coating the landscape, sounds amazing. While I wouldn't want this stage to have hazards, since I do want some more basic stages, you could have fire randomly dot certain platforms, making them uninhabitable until smothered with attacks. For the music, I feel like the best pick is The Cowboys Back in Town. It does a good job of mixing Gunman Clive's western roots with the game's weird and stylish tangents. When it comes to Fraymakers discussion, it seems like FNAF is impossible to avoid. That makes sense, considering it's probably the biggest indie franchise of all time, but it is slightly annoying since it clashes with the aesthetic of most other big indie series. A lot of people would pitch the pizzeria from FNAF 1 in this slot, but I'm gonna step away from the old and busted and look to the new hotness. Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex would make for a fantastic Fraymaker stage. There's two areas where you could set it, the main common area or the laser tag section, and I'm going with the latter. The format would be almost maze-like, with walls and platforms everywhere, all coated with neon. The stage would stay mostly open, however, so that the unique stage hazard could appear. The fight would mostly play out as per usual, but at certain intervals, the masked killer of this game would pop out from off-screen and take a stab at the players. These would be rare, and occur at specific spots on the map, but if you fall into one, it's an instant KO. As for the music, I have no idea. Most of the games that I've spent a decent amount of time with in this series were either just ambient noise or Markiplier screaming, mostly both. I did ask a friend online and they said smashing windows from Pizzeria Simulator. Yeah, that sounds like it'd work. Let's go with that. So, I don't know if you've heard of this little game. It's pretty niche. I think it's called the Henry Stickman Collection? Well, anyways, it's got this one pretty cool game about infiltrating an airship, called Infiltrating the Airship. And I think that's just begging to be a fighting game stage. The fight would be set in the cargo bay, with Top Hat gang members hanging out and reacting to the fight in the background. Occasionally, one of them will throw a silly little item on stage, to do things like trap characters in air bubbles, stick them to platforms with grappling hooks, or call in robo-buddies to throw off your groove. While it's tempting to feature Henry Stickman, and I absolutely would, I think the Stickman community would come at my head for not pitching him as an assist or a fighter, so I think I'll leave it at this. As for the music, Distraction Dance. No, just kidding. For the music, I'm going to suggest the conclusive battle from Infiltrating the Airship. It's a parody of Final Fantasy, but I think it could work really well in the jazz style. So of the stages I've pitched, I'm starting to notice a trend. Not one, not a single one of them involves a Mad Max car chase with dinosaurs. That's where Reptaria comes in. This stage is set atop a group of cars and trailers carrying freight across the desert, with platforms dotting the skyline. Of course, this is a car stage, so touching the ground would damage you. And for the main hazard, Ripjaw would occasionally show up and just tear the players apart, showcasing his signature brutality from the main game. For the music, my personal favorite track is Alone Against an Invasion. It's got this synthy vibe that really represents Double Cross's worlds well.
Bloodstained, Curse of the Moon.
Of all the stages in Bloodstained, the Brilliant Void is probably the most memorable, if only for its boss encounter, Valifor. This fight would start on a flat main stack of gold, and Valifor would try to crush player with more coins while adding to the stack. This would continue until the stack reaches a threshold about halfway up the screen, at which point Valifor would give up and just try crushing the players with his fists. For the music, it's tempting to go with the track from Curse of the Moon since that's what I've played, but Gears of Fortune from Ritual of the Night is my personal choice. It just fits the style of Fraymakers really well. If you've never played Spirit Sphere, I'm honestly not surprised. It's a retro fantasy tennis game, which is a super niche interest, but it's fantastic. It's got very satisfying gameplay, a really beautiful aesthetic, and it's super easy to pick up and play. For the stage, I'm going to suggest Ancient Arena. It'd be mostly flat with a hill-like platform in the center, but with hazards on, you'd be stuck fighting while the match is happening, with Lynn and Taya knocking the sphere back and forth. The players can interact with it too, and the more it gets smacked, the more damage it deals if you can't block or parry it, which turns the entire stage into a massive, scary game of Lethal League. For the music, well, there's really not much you can do. In fact, the OST isn't even on YouTube, so I can't really talk about it. I'm just gonna say Ancient Arena's theme. Lastly, possibly the prettiest stage I've got to talk about, the Forest of Awakening from Kamiko. This stage is set right in front of a shrine, with some platforms to the side. I spoke with easily the biggest Kamiko fan I know on Twitter, and they pitched a concept where players can hit switches to summon or remove platforms, and I think that could be super sick. However, I'd want that to be specific to Hazards On, just so that we could see a less complex stage. For the music, I think the Forest's main track suits the jazz and metal OSTs best. It's got this really nice level of energy that just feels perfect for Fraymakers. So that's about all I've got to say. This is a video I've been thinking about for a while, so I'm glad to have it out. I want to say a big thanks to Ouija on Twitter. I'll link them below. If you enjoy indie games, and especially if you like Kamiko, please go give them a follow. If you enjoy my content, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, comment, bell, Twitter, and I'll see you later. Peace out.